like this. Good news, boys. I didn't spill my beer.
We're gonna put together a team of inmates to play against my
I
guard.
just want to do my time.
Your time here will be a whole lot easier if you just participate.
The Longest Yard, released in 2005, stands as a modern reimagining of a classic sports comedy concept, blending prison drama, underdog storytelling, and broad humor into a single high-energy film experience. Set within the rigid and often brutal environment of a high-security prison, the movie uses football as both a narrative engine and a metaphor for resistance, dignity, and second chances. At its core, the story revolves around fallen fame, abused power, and the idea that even people written off by society can reclaim a sense of purpose when given something worth fighting for. The tone balances comedy and aggression, never allowing the humor to fully soften the harsh realities of incarceration, yet ensuring the film remains entertaining and accessible to a wide audience. The film centers on Paul Crewe, a former professional football quarterback whose life has collapsed due to scandal, ego, and self-destructive behavior. Once celebrated and admired, Paul now finds himself incarcerated after a reckless incident involving a stolen vehicle and a police chase. His arrival in prison immediately establishes him as both an outsider and a potential asset. The guards recognize his fame, the inmates recognize his past glory, and Paul himself recognizes that his name still carries weight, even in a place designed to strip men of identity. This tension between who he was and who he has become drives much of the character's emotional arc. Inside the prison, authority is represented by Warden Hazen, a manipulative and image-obsessed figure who sees football not as a game, but as a tool for ego and control. Hazen runs the guards' semi-professional football team and dreams of showcasing his dominance by humiliating the inmates in a public exhibition game. When he discovers Paul's former career, he pressures him to assemble and coach a team of prisoners to face the guards. The proposal is framed as entertainment and rehabilitation, but its true purpose is humiliation. Paul initially resists, understanding that the situation is designed to exploit him, yet circumstances gradually push him toward involvement. As Paul begins recruiting players from the inmate population, the film shifts into classic team-building territory. Each recruit carries a distinct personality, background, and reason for being locked away. Some are violent, some are foolish, some are quietly intelligent, and others are simply lost. Through football drills and locker room exchanges, the movie explores how competition can unify people who would otherwise remain divided by race, gang affiliation, or personal history. These sequences provide much of the film's humor, but they also underline a serious point: teamwork and mutual respect can emerge even in the most dehumanizing environments. Among the inmates, characters like Caretaker, Nate Scarborough, and various eccentric players add depth and texture to the story. Caretaker, in particular, represents institutional decay and moral compromise, having spent decades in prison under harsh treatment. His physical damage and quiet bitterness become symbolic of what unchecked authority can do to a human being. Paul's interactions with him and others slowly strip away Paul's arrogance, replacing it with empathy and responsibility. Football becomes more than a game. It becomes a means of restoring dignity. Training sequences highlight both the absurdity and intensity of preparing a football team in prison. Improvised equipment, chaotic practice sessions, and frequent clashes between players create a sense of barely contained energy. At the same time, Paul's leadership style evolves. Initially detached and self-serving, he gradually commits himself to the team's success, recognizing that the outcome of the game will affect far more than his own standing. This shift is crucial, marking the moment when Paul stops running from accountability and begins embracing it. Parallel to the team's development is Paul's internal struggle with guilt and reputation. His past scandal, which involved deliberately throwing a championship game, haunts him throughout the story. Other inmates question his integrity, and even Paul himself doubts whether he is capable of playing honestly when it matters most. This lingering doubt creates dramatic tension leading into the final act, as the audience is left to wonder whether Paul will once again betray those who trust him or finally redeem himself through genuine effort. The football game itself is staged as a brutal, emotionally charged confrontation rather than a lighthearted exhibition. From the opening kickoff, it becomes clear that the guards intend to assert dominance through violence and intimidation. The inmates suffer repeated illegal hits, biased officiating, and deliberate cruelty. These moments strip away any illusion that the event is fair, reinforcing the broader theme of systemic abuse of power. Yet, rather than breaking the inmates' spirit, the injustice fuels their resolve. As the game progresses, individual players rise to unexpected moments of heroism. Small victories on the field become symbolic acts of defiance, and each completed pass or successful tackle represents a reclaiming of self-worth. The crowd's reaction within the film underscores this shift, as spectators begin to root for the prisoners, recognizing the imbalance of power and the courage required simply to keep playing. The football field transforms into a stage where moral authority, rather than institutional authority, determines who truly deserves victory. Paul's defining moment arrives when he is pressured to throw the game in exchange for a reduced sentence. Faced with the same temptation that once destroyed his career, he must decide whether survival is worth repeating his greatest failure. His eventual choice to play honestly, even at personal cost, serves as the emotional climax of the story. In that moment, redemption is not portrayed as freedom or fame, but as integrity regained under impossible circumstances. The final moments of the game deliver a resolution that prioritizes meaning over conventional triumph. The outcome reinforces the idea that winning is not always defined by the scoreboard. Instead, the inmates achieve something more enduring: respect, unity, and the knowledge that they stood up to corruption without surrendering their humanity. Paul's fate, left somewhat ambiguous, emphasizes that redemption does not always come with immediate reward, but it remains valuable nonetheless. From a casting perspective, the film blends established actors with athletes and entertainers, creating a dynamic and physical ensemble. Adam Sandler anchors the film as Paul Crewe, bringing a mix of comedic familiarity and surprising dramatic restraint. His performance balances sarcasm with vulnerability, allowing the character's transformation to feel earned rather than forced. Chris Rock provides sharp comedic energy, delivering rapid-fire dialogue that contrasts with the film's heavier themes. Burt Reynolds' presence connects the remake to its cinematic legacy, lending authority and gravitas to the role of Nate Scarborough. The supporting cast, including wrestlers, football players, and character actors, adds authenticity to the on-field action and variety to the prison environment. The film's production emphasizes physicality and realism in its football sequences. Impacts are portrayed as painful and chaotic rather than stylized, reinforcing the idea that this is not a glamorous sport, but a dangerous collision of bodies and wills. The prison setting is shot to feel oppressive and claustrophobic, with harsh lighting and rigid architecture reinforcing the sense of confinement. Music choices complement the film's energy, blending aggressive rhythms with moments of emotional release. Released in the mid-2000s, the film reflects the era's appetite for remakes that update classic stories for new audiences while retaining their core appeal. It arrived at a time when sports films were increasingly used as vehicles for social commentary, and its blend of comedy and critique allowed it to reach viewers who might otherwise avoid heavier prison dramas. Trailers emphasized humor, star power, and the spectacle of the football game, while also hinting at the rebellious tone that sets the film apart from traditional sports comedies. Over time, the film has maintained relevance through its themes of authority, resistance, and redemption. While outwardly framed as entertainment, its narrative continues to resonate in discussions about institutional power and personal accountability. The Longest Yard ultimately succeeds because it understands that sports stories are rarely just about the game. They're about identity, choice, and the moments when individuals decide who they truly are when the stakes are highest.